And that was that. Kansas City's third Super Bowl win in 5 years. They did it again. That's how you heard it on talkSPORT. Kansas won 25-22 against San Francisco 49ers. Mahomes' touchdown pass to Mecole Hardman sealed victory. Now, a lot of people picked up on the fact that yet another phenomenal Super Bowl occasion. And talkSPORT.com US writer Brian T. Smith went further. He says Las Vegas Super Bowl proves NFL has overtaken the Premier League as the greatest league in the world. So who read that and sat bolt upright in his silk pajamas in bed? None other than Simon Jordan, who replied, someone's been drinking sherry. The NFL is big in America. The Premier League is big around the world on a weekly basis, not one Sunday every year. So the very courageous Brian T. Smith has joined us here in studio. Brian, great to have you on board. This is Martin O'Neill.
Hello,
This
Brian.
is Simon
Cheers, nice
Jordan.
to meet you. Yes, I am honored to be here. Seriously, I love the show. I listen regularly. Been at talkSPORT.com for the last 5 months or so, and it's an honor to be on here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's great. Now, having said that, did you mean what you said? Las Vegas Super Bowl proves the NFL has overtaken the Premier League as the greatest league in the world. Was that tongue-in-cheek?
So, two-part answer to that. Number one, as most everyone knows in the media, writers don't always write the headlines. Rarely write the headlines, right? So I'm not putting that on anybody.
you're
No,
hiding
that's a
behind the
fact.
headline.
That's a fact. So the
All
headline
right.
is what grabs you.
Okay.
Number two, I don't write it if I don't believe it. So yes, I that is a fact, and let's debate this and get into it. But if you want to actually break it down and not be specific to England, not be specific to America, I can give you reasons, and I'm sure you can, why the Premier League is bigger. I can also give you reasons why the NFL is bigger. I will throw this out there right now, and I full respect. Give me your example. What is the Premier League Super Bowl?
Oh, you're looking at his face.
What is
You're
the
in
Premier League
trouble
Super Bowl?
now.
No, Premier League Super Bowl.
Well, you could say
Is there one?
Well, every week we get the same viewing figures as you get for your biggest occasion. So you get 100 million viewers around the world watching a Premier League calendar. You get 115 million to watch your biggest event. The most noise, the biggest hullabaloo, all that goes with it. Like most things American, it's laced with a stable diet of delusion, exaggeration, and self-aggrandizing. So,
England or America?
And talks about America.
Pretty similar.
Yeah,
sometimes.
but you're the only country in the world that would have the audacity to say that the Baseball World Series, which is competed by yourselves, is actually a World Series. So when you look at it and say...
Baseball is actually truly an international sport. So the best...
Come on. The World Series is competed by whom?
Players from the Dominican Republic, players from Asia,
Fine,
players
but
from Canada, players from all over the world.
Itself, and which teams it's competed
That's a
by.
very limited view.
No, we're not talking about the participants. We're talking about the
aren't you?
clubs.
The greatest league
serious.
in the world is the NFL.
What's the revenue?
By what metric?
What's the revenue?
Put aside the revenue. What metric? Put aside the revenue.
revenue.
Well, okay, what you mean commercial endorsers? Well,
I'm
because
talking
you guys fill your face every day with oversized food, you're going to have to suggest that ultimately...
Wait, is this anti-America?
No,
are we talking sports? Or are we talking
anti-hyperbole? Because by what metric? If you're looking at the viewing figures and say, okay, let's pick the population of America, 360 million people in America.
How do you measure success?
By various metrics. If it's only finance...
One thing.
No. Not true at all. If you only measure it by finance...
We're not taking Messi versus Mahomes. You measure success by winning and money.
We're talking about... Well, you're talking also about eyes on the prize.
What's the revenue?
Of what? The Super Bowl?
No.
In what terms?
The NFL versus Premier League.
Receipts. Yeah, fine, $250 million a team. Granted.
The NFL triples Premier League in revenue.
I understand
Triples.
that. But we're talking about other metrics
Triples.
in terms... What you're telling me that the NFL brings in 15, 16, 17 billion a year.
I am.
Does it?
That's a fact.
Does it?
If that's a fact, I mean, Brian knows his stuff and has written about it.
I've been doing this for the last 20 years.
I thought it was 10 billion.
But having said that,
Net revenue. So we're talking net revenue. I don't have it in front. I think net revenue Premier League is like 5 to 6.
Broadcast deals.
Net revenue, merchandise sales,
you've been here for the last 5 months, so mate. What do you honestly make of our Premier League here?
And for the fact, I love Premier League. I absolutely love it. I'm obsessed with it. But there is no and this is my point right in the column. This and I've mentioned this many times. This was no disrespect to the Premier League. I love it, but it doesn't have a and we can get into Euros and Champions League and World Cup, and it's club and country over here. And I fully respect that. But the point of the column and what we put at talksport.com is that the fact that the NFL gets bigger and bigger, and the reason they've done that is because they have this playoff system. And, here's another point. And this isn't the Premier League's fault, and this is a whole nother conversation, but you have the European Super League. There's this push to have a playoff system, to have this general... There's no need for that in America. Nobody in America would think of trying to trump the Super Bowl, because you can't go any bigger than the Super Bowl. But ultimately, it comes down to money. And if the NFL triples the revenue...
Because you perceive the World Series to be in America. Whereas we look at it from a completely different perspective.
But we're talking about the NFL. We're not talking about the World Series in baseball. We're talking about the NFL and the Premier League.
Okay, well, look at the NFL. And if you look at the fact the NFL is in its 58th year, right, and the Premier League is in its 30th year, and you compare and contrast and on the basis of growth, I would suggest to you the Premier League is probably eclipsing where the Super Bowl was and where NFL is after 30 years. If you look at the viewership figures, if you look at the fact that we've got 740 million people in Europe, and the Champions League final will get 600 million people
which is
watching
amazing and
You've got
remarkable,
360 million people and 115 million. Where the Super Bowl is successful is, if we want to talk about financial metric, clearly, because the scale of America always affords that. Where it's successful is in America. Whereas football and Premier League is successful is around the globe. And if it's under-resourcing its economic returns, fine, it will soon monetize that better, and then it will go on and eclipse the NFL. If you then look at the time spans of the growth patterns of these two leagues, it's undeniable that the Premier League will eclipse the NFL in the end.
In 20 or 30 years.
I would suggest inside the next decade.
But right now, you would argue what we witnessed last night in Las Vegas is bigger than anything the Premier League could serve up.
When it comes to the Super Bowl, which was the point of the column, nothing the Premier League has can offer anything comparable to the Super Bowl. That's just a fact. There's a 2-week build-up. You have Taylor Swift. You have the halftime show. You might hate it. You might think it's the worst example of Americanism in the world. But it is the peak of sport. The only thing that's comparable to the Super Bowl... No, in terms of world... The only thing that's comparable to the Super Bowl is the World Cup final. That's it. It's the World Cup final and the Super Bowl.
But by the only metric, if you've got 100 million people watching
money, what makes the world go around?
But you're suggesting it's the only metric.
That of all people.
No, it's a significant metric, right? And if they're under-resourcing it, if you've got an FA Cup final, which is a pinnacle English game, which is watched by...
that's not, and you know this infinitely better than I do. But are we talking specifically Premier League and NFL, which is what I wrote about?
It's predominantly made up by Premier League sides that compete in it.
But it's not all.
So the two Premier League
not
brands,
all.
No, it's not. I understood that, right? But the two sides that compete in it most times round are Premier League sides, and it gets an audience of 500 million quid. Sure. So you only are 500 million viewers. So the only argument is, come on now, soccer. Monetize yourself properly and kick this game into the long grass, because really and truly the only people that are interested in it are in North America.
Can I ask a question?
Have at it.
Okay, right. So you're talking about the Super Bowl, which is divided into two sections: is the NFL, AFL. So it means that Buffalo Bills, for instance, can never play Kansas City Chiefs in the final. Can never play them in the Super Bowl final. It's number one. Secondly, your point is that you're talking about a Super Bowl because it's in the playoff system, which it really comes to life in the playoffs. So Are you suggesting then that the Premier League should have a playoff system rather than somebody going to win the league or whatever? Is that
so? Can I give you my honest opinion on that? And because you guys, you're the experts. You're the pros. You're gonna,
Brian,
we start going in this, you're going to destroy me. I'm just giving you my honest opinion.
No, I'm just.
Brian T. Smith, T's for tenacious, obviously tenacious.
I was a sports columnist at the Houston Chronicle for the last 12 years. This is what I do for a living. But from my perspective, being over here watching it, going to matches, loving it, taking as much as I can, I do find it odd from an outsider's perspective that there is no playoff in the Premier League and there is no true champ. Now you can say it's points and you play 38 matches and by the end of the season, but to me, if I'm looking at it, that's why there is this push to have a European Super League, to have the best of the best and eventually have a super champion, have a final deciding game. There is none of that in the Premier League. It has it in the NBA. It has it in almost every sport, has some type of playoff system. The Premier League doesn't have that, and I think that's where the Super Bowl and the NFL specifically has really, really excelled in the last 20 years.
Listen, forget Fury-Usyk. Many people are loving the Simon Jordan, Brian T. Smith debate. There's one message. I agree totally with Brian. For a start, the NFL relies on American investors, American fans, American money. How many NFL franchises are in debt compared to Premier League clubs? That's a great point.
The maturity of the American sports market is something to be admired.
Yeah.
because they get together, all the MLS owners, all the NFL owners, and the
Yeah.
first thing they start with is how does the franchise make money?
And there's one of our
And move
regular
on from
listeners,
there.
Brian. Well done to Brian for coming in, and to America for loving a sport no one else cares a damn about. Listen, Brian, you were magnificent, my friend.
I appreciate that. Means a lot. Well, no, seriously, I love the show, and I would gladly, and I'm gonna lose and win. I would gladly debate it. I think it's fun to have this conversation, and thanks again for having me on.
Brilliant. Brian T. Smith. Head to talksport.com if you want to see more of what Brian is all about. That was terrific. 11:30.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.